You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel that you're working, you never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel that you're working, you never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working.
God, you are each of those things and so much more. You are good to us. We worship you today and every day, and may our worship be a blessing in your eyes. God, thank you for meeting us here, for meeting us this morning exactly where we are in each of our homes. I pray that you would be with us as we continue to learn about you today, God. We gather here so we can do exactly that, so we can stand in your presence, worship you, and learn more about the faithfulness of who you are. God, you deserve all of our praise and all of our glory. We pray each of these things in your holy name. Amen.
Hey guys, and welcome to episode 2 of Lifelines. Now, what you need to know with this series is we are actually taking a few weeks to talk about what it looks like to have good friends, or more importantly, what it looks like to be a good friend, to be the kind of friend that is a lifeline to others. And in order to be that kind of friend, we have to follow the example of Jesus. And this week we are going to be talking about how a good friend, a friend who is a lifeline, is someone who helps you grow. I mean, have you guys ever had a friend who called something out on you that wasn't easy to hear? They told you something that you were doing or how you were treating people or how you were acting that you weren't aware of, and it wasn't fun to hear, but it was important that you heard it. I've had that happen to me many times over my life, and I've had wonderful friends who have sat down with me in times when I needed to hear truth, and it's helped me grow. I think one of the first memories of this I can ever remember was when I was in 7th grade. I was in 7th grade and I was over at my friend Mel's house. And I don't remember what I was talking about. I'm assuming because of how this conversation went, I was talking about myself. But Mel all of a sudden just yelled at me, "Ronnie, you are so conceited." And that hurt. I heard that and I was shocked. And of course, Mel maybe could have said it more lovingly instead of just yelling it at me, but we were in 7th grade. But the thing is, I then started paying attention to how I acted at school. I then started paying attention to how much I talked about myself and how little I asked others about how they were doing. And the sad thing is, it was true. I was really conceited. I only really cared about sharing my stories. I only really cared about celebrating myself or talking about myself. And so I started to make a change. Mel called out the truth that I needed to hear, and it caused me to start making a change to be more considerate of others, and it's something I still think about to this day. I never want to be conceited. I want to be someone who is kind and compassionate and present. And in order for me to be able to be that person, I first needed to be called out for it. And the thing is, we all need to be called out for something. And a lot of times it can be an attitude change, or it can be something that is not as big, but is still important, how you treat people or at least talk to them in conversations. But sometimes the things we need to be called out in is decisions we're making that are not healthy, whether emotionally or physically, or decisions that are causing us to be absolutely stuck in our life. And I want to talk about 3 different kinds of things that we often need to be called out for. It's things that cause us to drift, things that cause us to be distracted, and things that cause us to drown. Now, when we're drifting, it's not just one big decision that's a huge mistake, but instead it's a bunch of small decisions that we may not even be aware of, but those decisions cause us to lose sight of who we want to be, to lose sight of ourselves. When we become distracted, it's when we start making decisions or start placing ourselves in situations that cause us to forget what is important, forget what matters, whether it's ourselves or whether it's others. And the last one is when we're drowning. It's when we find ourselves in situations, whether by our choosing or not. Sometimes crazy things happen. We are unbelievably overwhelmed and we feel stuck and lost and we're not even sure what to do. And sometimes we're not even aware that it's happening. But the thing is, a good friend is willing to call out call out the truth we need to hear in those moments when we find ourselves drifting, or we find ourselves distracted, or we find ourselves drowning. And Jesus sets an incredible example of what this looks like in the story of Martha and Mary. And I'm going to read it. It's in Luke 10:38 through 42, and here's what it says. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had been made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." I think what's important to know in this story is that Jesus is calling something out in Martha that she is not aware of. And what you need to recognize is Mary and Martha are disciples of Jesus. And disciples is not something that was just started when Christianity began, but actually being a disciple was something that stretches far back into the Jewish heritage, Jewish history. And what that means is a disciple was somebody who sat and listened and was taught by a rabbi. A disciple was somebody who sat and not only listened to their teaching, but then sought to apply it to themselves, to imitate the teachings of their rabbi and live it out. So being a disciple of Jesus means that you're supposed to be sitting at his feet, be going to him for teachings, but then taking it and applying it to who you are, applying it to who you're supposed to be. And Jesus is reminding Martha of that. Because Martha could have had so many things going through her minds that she could not have recognized. She could have just had expectations that she placed on herself that she didn't understand. She could be living out expectations that others have placed on her. She could be frustrated with Mary because she expects something of Mary, but she's not communicating it. But there's so many different things that could have caused Martha to think the way she thought and to focus on what she was focusing on. But Jesus spoke truth in that moment. Jesus spoke truth in that moment and was like, "Martha, you're distracted. You're distracted from what matters. And what matters is sitting at my feet, hearing what I have to say, and then living it out. You don't need to worry about making the house perfect. You don't need to worry about impressing me. You don't need to worry about determining your worth by how you welcome me into your home. No, you need to sit at my feet and learn and grow." And that is something that we need. We need to find friends that help us see the truth when it's not always easy to hear, help point out when we're drifting or distracted or drowning, and remind us of what is important. But we are also called to be those people as well. You see, in Ephesians 5:1-2, this is what it says. "Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." What this verse is telling us is that we are called to be imitators of God, imitators of Jesus. And Jesus sets countless examples of what it looks like to be a good friend and what it looks like to call out truth in difficult situations for others, but also ourselves. What does it look like for us to be willing to have those conversations that are so desperately needed, but never fun to have? What is it like for us to know that sometimes sharing that truth that might not be easy to hear in the moment is the best way to love someone? How can we recognize in ourselves how we've become stuck so that when truth is spoken to us, we can know it and hear it? Or that when we go to Jesus, we can see where we've become distracted, where we are drifting, or where we might be drowning. So today, I want you to go into small group, and I want you to be talking about where in your life do you think you might be drifting, distracted, or drowning? You could be experiencing all of them, you could be experiencing one of them, or you might even be experiencing none. And if you're experiencing none, please talk about why you think you're there. But just really take some time to look at yourself today and ask, am I making choices in my life that are steering me away from growth, that are steering me away from what is healthy, that are steering me away from what matters most, which is my relationship with Jesus? And then finally, I want you to be talking about in small group on whether or not you are the kind of friend that is willing to share harsh truth. Are you the friend that is willing to say what is so needed to be said? And if you're not, how can you be challenging yourself to step out in love? Because that's what it is. Sometimes we can convince ourselves that sharing that truth, and I do this too, sharing that truth is too hurtful. Sharing that truth is not kind. But we need to remember that if somebody is making choices that is ultimately hurting them or causing them to lose sight of who they are or what is healthy, the harsh truth is the kindest, most loving thing we can do. We are called to be people that actively recognize that we will never be perfect and that for the rest of our lives there are so many different changes that we are going to need to make. There are so many different times we are going to need to adjust what we are doing, what we value, what we love, or the choices we make. And that's okay. We are actively always going to have to shift our trajectory, shift the direction we're heading in. And Jesus knows that. But how we do that well is recognizing the importance of growth and understanding that truth is necessary for it. So, are you drifting, distracted, or drowning? And are you the kind of friend that's willing to share truth when it's needed? Welcome to Ronnie and Chip Do Announcements.
Hey there!
Alright guys, we have some quick announcements for you this week. The first one is that there is no James Bible study next week. No. Instead, we are going to be doing a Willow-wide Student Ministries worship night, and you can join in and watch through Facebook Live or through YouTube. It's going to be on at 8 p.m. and we would love for you guys to join that. So remember, there will be no Bible study. But then also...
That was my part.
No, the second part. We also don't have Bible study the next week.
Oh, okay, it's for next week. No Bible study the week after that because it's July 4th, so just enjoy the holiday weekend.
Yeah, we know that the week of 4th of July is just full of a lot of celebration and time with family, and we don't want you to feel like you're missing out on Bible study by hanging out with your friends and fam. So, we're not having Bible study that week. And then the final announcement we have for you guys is that there are a ton of opportunities to serve, and if you are interested, let your small group leader know. Give them your email and I will send you all of the details. There are ways that we can love senior citizens in our community, ways that we can love families in need during this time, ways that we can help with organizations like Love Inc. And so if you want to learn more, make sure your leader sends me your email.
Lots of options.
Exactly. So that's what I have for you guys, and this is Ronnie and Chip
Signing off!
doing announcements.